I never imagined a man of God could make me feel so loved and so wrong at the same time. For years he preached about kindness and purity from the church altar, but at night he knocked on my door. He was a priest, and he slept in my house. If you want to find out how it all began, hit subscribe now. Leave a comment telling me where you're watching from. I love hearing from you. Believe me, this story will move you deeper than any soap opera. It's real, it's shocking, and it will hit hard. My name is Eleanor. I'm 82 years old, and for decades I carried a secret I thought I'd take to the grave. But today, I've decided to tell it, not just for me, but to show how misleading the human heart and a man's smile can be. Everyone in town knew him, Father Michael, the kind priest with a strong voice in the pulpit, always ready with comforting words. No one doubted him, not even me, but at night, far from the eyes of the church, he came to my door. He knocked softly, as if he knew no one else would hear, and I opened it. I always did. For years, we lived something I still can't define. Friendship, comfort, sin, maybe all of it together. If you think you've heard it all, and wait until you hear this story, because the truth is more complicated than it seems. I was never the kind of woman who asked for much. I lived quietly. A small house, a worn-out chair by the window, and Sunday Mass like clockwork. My husband died young, no children. The family I had, well, life moved on without me. Loneliness isn't loud. It's quiet. It settles in slowly, until one day you realize your only conversations are with yourself. Father Michael noticed. Not just in passing, but in a way that made me feel seen again. He'd stop by after church, bring a newspaper, say a prayer. But it wasn't just kindness. There was something else in his eyes. And maybe in mine too. I wasn't looking for love. I wasn't even looking for company. But somehow, he became my comfort. Even when I knew it shouldn't be that way. It started with a storm. One of those nights when the wind howled like it knew something was about to change. The power went out and I was alone as always. Around 9 p.m., there was a knock at the door. I wasn't expecting anyone. But there he stood, soaked from the rain, holding a flashlight and a blanket. "I just wanted to make sure you were okay," he said. That's all it took. A simple gesture, or so I thought. He came in, lit some candles, made tea. We talked for hours about my past, his doubts, the weight of silence, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel invisible. That night wasn't scandalous, it was soft, but it cracked. Something opened inside me, and from that moment on, everything between us began to shift. It wasn't the first time I saw him. I'd seen Father Michael every Sunday for years. But that night was different. The candles flickered in the dark living room, casting shadows on the walls like ghosts of a life I thought was gone. The storm still rumbled outside, but inside, everything felt still. He sat across from me, his cassock damp, his collar loosened. For once, he didn't look like the man behind the pulpit. He looked human. We talked about my husband, how much I missed holding someone's hand. And then, after a long pause, he said something I'll never forget. "You don't have to be alone, Eleanor." His voice was soft, almost trembling. I looked into his eyes and saw something unexpected. Not just compassion, but longing. I didn't know what to say. My heart raced, confused and afraid. Was this right? Was this real? But before I could speak, he reached out and gently took my hand. That touch, it wasn't passionate or hurried. It was warm, reassuring, and somehow it changed everything. In that moment, I realized this wasn't just comfort anymore. It was connection, one we both needed, and one we both knew we weren't supposed to have. After that night, something inside me began to shift. At first I told myself it was just loneliness speaking, that the storm had made us both vulnerable, nothing more. But then he came back, again and again. Each time it felt less like a visit and more like a return. He'd bring me small things, a flower from the church garden, a devotional, book, once even a slice of pie from the diner across town. Nothing extravagant, but enough to make me feel remembered, and I started to feel different, lighter, like a part of me that had gone quiet for years was waking up. I looked in the mirror one morning and realized I'd smiled while brushing my teeth, something I hadn't done in years without forcing it. People at church didn't notice. They still saw me as the quiet widow who sat in the third row, always alone. But I wasn't alone anymore. Even though what we had didn't have a name, it gave me warmth, purpose, a reason to wait by the window when night fell. I knew it was complicated. I wasn't naive, but for the first time in a long time, I felt alive. And maybe that's why I kept letting him in. It didn't take long for our visits to become more. At first it was just quiet conversations by candlelight, but soon he started staying later. We'd talk about everything: the weight of faith, the silence of God, the loneliness of carrying a role no one truly understands. One night he told me something I never expected. "I envy you," he said, staring into his tea. I laughed at first. "You? A man of God? Envy me?" He looked up, eyes tired in a way I hadn't seen before. "You're free," he whispered. "I carry a cross every day. One I chose, or maybe one that was chosen for me." That was the first time I saw the cracks beneath his holy image. And as the weeks passed, those cracks grew. He began to share more, doubts about his vows, memories of a life he might have had, regrets he couldn't pray away. I realized then that he wasn't just coming to comfort me. He was searching for comfort too. Sometimes we'd sit in silence, hands intertwined. Other times, he'd rest his head on my shoulder, and I'd run my fingers through his hair, like a mother would with a child afraid of the dark. We never crossed certain lines. Not in the way people might assume, but what we shared, it was real, deep, forbidden, and somehow sacred. Because in each other's presence, we weren't priest and parishioner. We were just two souls trying to survive the weight of being human. One night, he didn't knock. The hours passed. The candles burned low. I waited by the window, then by the door. But he never came. I don't know what made me do it. Maybe fear, maybe love. But I finally stood up, wrapped a shawl around my shoulders, and walked to the rectory. It wasn't much, just across the street from the church. But every step felt like crossing a line I couldn't go back from. When he opened the door, surprise turned to worry in his eyes. "I needed to see you," I said, voice trembling. I needed to know if this was real. He didn't answer right, away. He just pulled me inside. That night changed something. For the first time, I wasn't waiting for him to come to me. I had gone to him, and in that small act of courage, I realized I still had a voice, a will, a heart worth fighting for, even if it was breaking every rule I'd ever known. It was spring when we took our first walk together. Not as priest and parishioner, not as strangers hiding in the dark, but as two people who had become something more. We didn't go far. Just down the street, past the church, toward the old park where children used to play on Sunday afternoons. Everything felt different in the daylight. The world seemed brighter, but also dangerous, like someone might recognize us, see what we were trying so hard to keep hidden. He wore a simple coat instead of his cassock. No collar, no title, just Michael. We sat on a bench beneath a blooming cherry tree. The petals fell around us like snowflakes in reverse, soft, quiet, fleeting. I wish I could do this every day, he said, watching a bird land near our feet. I looked at him, really looked at him, and realized how much he missed being ordinary. We started going out more, always careful, always aware. A coffee shop across town, a quiet diner late at night. We never held hands in public, never even sat too close. But sometimes, when no one was looking, he'd rest his hand on mine for just a second, and it would feel like everything. People noticed I smiled more. Some thought I'd found peace. Others assumed I'd just aged gracefully. But I knew the truth. I wasn't just aging. I was living. And for the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of what came next. We never said the words out loud, not in the way most lovers do. But we didn't need to. He'd bring me tea in the morning when he stayed over. I learned how he liked it. 2 sugars, no milk. I kept a spare coat for him behind the door. He started leaving books on my shelf, sometimes with notes tucked between the pages. We built a life in the quiet spaces, in shared silences, stolen glances, and the comfort of knowing someone was there, even if the world couldn't know. But love like ours wasn't easy. He wrestled with guilt. Some nights he wouldn't come because he'd locked himself away trying to pray us both away. Other times he'd show up shaken, eyes red, whispering, "I tried." But I couldn't stay away, and I understood, because I felt it too. That pull between right and wrong, heaven and earth, duty and desire. Once, after a long silence between visits, I asked him, "Do you regret this?" He looked at me, cupped my face in his hands, and said, "Never, even if it's wrong. Being here with you is the only time I feel truly honest." That meant more than any sermon. We weren't perfect. We made mistakes. We hurt each other without meaning to. But we kept coming back. Not just for comfort, but for truth. For years we lived in the shadows, and yet somehow we found light in each other, even if it was never meant to last. Looking back, I don't regret it. Not the nights we shared, not the words whispered in the dark, not even the pain that came after. Because for a time, he made me feel seen, truly seen, in a world that had long since stopped noticing me. And I like to think I did the same for him. We were never meant to be. But somehow, we were exactly what each other needed. Love doesn't always come with permission. Sometimes it finds you when you're not looking, in the wrong place, at the wrong time, through the wrong door. But if love is real, can it ever truly be wrong? I don't have all the answers. I only know that faith fades, rules change. But what we felt, that was real, and maybe that's enough. If this story touched your heart, I'd love to hear from you. Share in the comments. Have you ever felt a connection you weren't supposed to feel, or known someone who lived a life others never saw? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next story. There's always more to uncover. More lives lived in silence. More secrets kept for too long. Because sometimes the most powerful stories aren't the ones we tell out loud. They're the ones we carry in our hearts. Thank you for listening.